The empire was old. It stretched across 7 star systems, and its people had been traveling between the stars when humans were still living in caves. The empire was ruled by Queen, who sat on a throne made of living crystal on the moon called. She had ruled for over 400 years, and her skin glowed with soft light that changed color with her moods. Her eyes had seen empires rise and fall. To her, most lives were brief flickers, here and gone before she could remember their names. The Queen's royal guard was famous across the galaxy. 200 warriors chosen from a dozen different species, each one the best of their kind. They were tall and covered in scales harder than steel. They could crush stone with their bare hands. They were thin and fast, able to move quicker than the eye could follow. They were masters of the mind, able to sense danger before it arrived. Together, they formed a wall of protection around the Queen that had never been broken. Among these legendary warriors stood one human. His name was. He had come to 8 months ago as part of a cultural exchange program. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community, and humans were still proving themselves. The exchange was meant to build trust between species. One human guard would serve in the palace and one guard would serve on Earth. It was symbolic. It was political. It was not meant to be important. Was 26 years old. He was not particularly tall or strong. He had no special abilities. He could not crush stone or move faster than light or read minds. He was simply a soldier who had scored well on his tests and had been chosen for this assignment because he followed orders and did not cause problems. The other guards treated him with polite distance. They were not cruel, but they did not include him either. To them, he was a curiosity, like a pet that had learned to walk on 2 legs. His supervisor was a named who stood 3 meters tall and had fought in wars that lasted longer than human civilizations. Sometimes forgot that existed. Once, he scheduled for guard duty during a shift that was already working. When pointed this out, simply blinked his large yellow eyes and said, "Ah." The human, yes, was assigned to the outer ring of the throne room. This was the least important position. The outer ring guards were there for appearance, to make the room look properly defended. The real protection came from the inner rings where the inn stood ready. His job was to stand still, look professional, and stay out of the way. He did this job well. He stood for hours without moving. He kept his uniform clean. He learned the protocols and followed them exactly. But he also did something else, something that no one noticed or cared about. He watched the nobles who came to petition the Queen. He watched the servants who moved through the palace. He watched the other guards and how they positioned themselves. He watched the Queen herself, though he was careful never to stare directly at her. He noticed small things: a noble who smiled too widely, a servant who walked too quickly, 2 guards who never stood near each other as if they were avoiding something. He noticed that Lord of the Third House had visited the palace 17 times in the past 3 months. This was unusual. Lords of his rank typically came once or twice a year. Each time brought gifts and spoke of his loyalty to the Queen. Each time his eyes moved around the room, counting guards, measuring distances. Notice that lady, who controlled the palace's security systems, had recently replaced several of her technicians. The new workers were quiet and kept to themselves. They did not eat in the common areas or talk to other staff. He noticed that general, who commanded the soldiers in the outer rings of the moon, had been meeting with merchants from off-world. These meetings happened late at night, in parts of the palace where security was light. Noticed all of this, but he did not report it. He was a human, a borrowed soldier, a diplomatic gesture with a pulse. Who would listen to him? What could he prove? He had only observations, only feelings, only the sense that something was wrong. They had a saying, "The river does not fear the stone, for the river will outlast the stone." They were patient people. They thought in centuries, not days. If something was wrong, surely someone more important would notice. Surely the Queen's advisors, with their centuries of experience, would see what saw. But experience can become blindness. When you have seen 1,000 plots fail, You stop believing that the next one will succeed. When you have lived for 400 years, you forget that danger can move quickly. The Festival of Pale Stars was approaching. It was the most important celebration in the calendar, marking the day when their ancestors first achieved faster-than-light travel. For one night, the palace would be filled with guests from across the empire. The queen would sit on her throne and receive the blessings of her people. It would be beautiful. It would be grand. Stood at his post in the outer ring and felt the wrongness growing. He could not name it. He could not prove it. But something in his gut, some ancient human instinct that had kept his ancestors alive through ice ages and predators and countless dangers, told him that the festival would bring something terrible. He thought about requesting a transfer. He thought about sending a message to his commanders on Earth. He thought about simply doing his job and trusting that others knew better than he did. In the end, he did none of these things. He simply continued to watch, continued to wait, and continued to stand at his post in the outer ring of the throne room. The Festival of Pale Stars was 3 days away. The palace was busy with preparations. Servants hung decorations of silver and white. Musicians practiced ancient songs. Cooks prepared feasts that would feed thousands. And somewhere in the shadows, people who wanted the queen dead made their final preparations. Did not know exactly what was coming, but he knew with a certainty that he could not explain that when it came, he would not run. He was human. Running was always an option, but so was standing still. So was staying. The Festival of Pale Stars began at sunset. The sky above turned from deep blue to purple to black, and then the stars appeared, brighter than had ever seen them. They said that on this night, the stars themselves came closer to watch the celebration. Did not know if this was true, but the sky was beautiful. The throne room was filled with light and music and people. Nobles from across the 7 systems had come to pay respect to Queen. They wore clothes made of materials that could not name, fabrics that shifted and flowed like living things. Jewels hung from their necks and wrists, some of them glowing with inner fire. The air smelled of flowers that did not exist on Earth, sweet and strange. Queen sat on her crystal throne, and she was the most beautiful thing in the room. Her skin glowed with soft silver light, and her eyes reflected the stars. She wore a crown of woven light, and when she smiled at her guests, the entire room seemed to grow warmer. She had ruled for 4 centuries, but tonight she looked young, alive, happy. Stood at his post in the outer ring. He wore his dress uniform, which was uncomfortable but looked impressive. Around him, the other guards stood at attention, their weapons polished, their faces serious. Even his supervisor seemed alert tonight. The festival was important, and everyone wanted to do their jobs well. The celebration continued for hours. There were speeches and songs and dances. Food was served on plates that floated through the air. Wine was poured from bottles that never seemed to empty. Guests laughed and talked and enjoyed themselves. Did not eat or drink, he watched. He saw Lord standing near the east entrance. The noble was smiling, but his eyes were not watching the celebration. They were watching the guards, counting them, nodding their positions. He saw Lady excuse herself from a conversation and walk toward a side door. Her movement was casual, but her pace was quick. She checked her wrist device 3 times in 30 seconds. He saw General standing with a group of military officers. They were not talking about the festival. Their voices were low and their faces were tense. One of them kept looking at the ceiling. The wrongness that had felt for weeks was now screaming inside him. Something was about to happen, something terrible. But he could not move, could not speak, could not do anything except stand at his post and watch. At the 11th hour of the night, the lights went out. It happened all at once. Every light in the throne room, every candle and lamp and glowing crystal died in the same instant. The room was plunged into complete darkness. For a moment, there was only confused silence. Then the screaming began. Felt it before he understood it. a pressure inside his head like something trying to push its way into his brain. And then came the fear. Not ordinary fear, not the kind that comes from seeing danger. This was fear itself, pure and absolute, flooding every part of his mind with the certainty of death. His heart pounded so hard he thought it would burst. His legs turned weak. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold his weapon. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, to hide, to get away from this place as fast as possible. Around him, the throne room erupted into chaos. Guests ran in every direction, crashing into each other, falling over furniture, screaming without words. The guards, the legendary guards who had never failed, dropped their weapons and fled. Saw, the massive warrior who had fought in 100 battles, running toward the exit with tears streaming from his yellow eyes. He saw guards, the fastest beings in the galaxy, trampling over each other in their desperation to escape. He saw masters of mental discipline curled on the floor, sobbing like children. 200 guards, the finest warriors of 7-star systems, gone in less than a minute. The fear continued to press against his mind. It told him that death was coming. It told him that nothing could stop it. It told him that his only chance was to run now, to run faster than he had ever run before. He did not run. His body wanted to run. Every muscle, every nerve, every cell screamed at him to move. But somewhere deep inside him, in a place that the fear could not reach, something held firm. It was not courage. It was not bravery. It was simply stubbornness, a human stubbornness that had been built over millions of years of evolution, a refusal to give up even when giving up was the only logical choice. His ancestors had survived ice ages. They had faced predators with nothing but rocks and sticks. They had walked across continents, crossed oceans, climbed mountains. They had done impossible things, not because they were strong or fast or smart, but because they refused to stop. They refused to accept that they were beaten. Was there air, and he refused to run. He forced his legs to move, not away from the throne, but toward it. Each step was agony. Each step felt like walking through fire. The fear screamed at him, louder and louder, telling him he was going to die, telling him he was a fool, telling him that nothing he did mattered. He kept walking. The emergency lights flickered on, dim red lights that cast long shadows across the throne room, and in those shadows saw them. 7 figures moving toward the throne with silent grace. They were tall and thin, and their bodies seemed wrong somehow, as if they did not quite belong in this reality. They wore black armor that absorbed the light, and their faces were hidden behind masks of silver. The silver knives, assassins bred for one purpose, to kill royalty. They had destroyed entire bloodlines. They had never failed. They were coming for the queen. And between them and her stood only a human, a borrowed soldier, a diplomatic gesture with a pulse. He raised his weapon and stood his ground. The silver knives stopped moving. They had not expected this. In all their years of killing, in all the palaces they had entered and all the royalty they had destroyed, no one had ever stood before them after the void chorus began. The fear they broadcast was absolute. It was perfect. It was impossible to resist. And yet here stood this small, fragile creature, its body shaking, its weapon raised, blocking the path to the throne. The leader of the silver knives tilted its head. Behind its silver mask, eyes that had watched countless beings die studied this strange human with something like curiosity. When it spoke, its voice was like broken glass scraping against stone. "Human, you feel the chorus. I can taste your fear. Why do you remain?" Could barely breathe. The fear was still pressing against his mind, still telling him to run, still showing him images of his own death. His hands shook so badly that his weapon moved back and forth. His legs felt like they might collapse at any moment. Sweat ran down his face, and his heart beat so fast that his chest hurt. But he did not move. He did not lower his weapon. He did not run. "Because someone has to," he said. His voice cracked. It was not the voice of a hero. It was the voice of a terrified man who had chosen to stand anyway. Behind him, on the crystal throne, Queen watched. She could not move. The void chorus was affecting her too, pressing against her mental defenses, trying to break through centuries of discipline. She had enough strength to stay conscious, but not enough to stand, to fight, to do anything except watch this human place himself between her and death. She did not understand. She had never spoken to this guard. She had never acknowledged his existence. She had seen him standing at his post in the outer ring and thought nothing of him, just another face in the crowd, just another brief life that would flicker out while she continued. Why would he die for her? What did he hope to gain? The lead assassin stepped forward. Its movements were smooth and wrong, like a spider wearing human shape. "Brave," it said. "Foolish. You cannot defeat us. You cannot even delay us. Your weapon cannot hurt us. Your body is weak. Your mind is breaking. What do you hope to accomplish?" Thought about this question. It was a good question. The assassin was right. He could not win this fight. He was one human against 7 of the deadliest killers in the galaxy. His weapon was standard issue, designed for crowd control, not for fighting beings that had been bred for murder. He was shaking so badly he could barely aim. He was going to die. But dying was not the same as giving up. "I hope to make you work for it," said. The assassin laughed. It was a horrible sound, like metal tearing. "Work for it? You are one human. You are nothing. Step aside and we will let you live. We have no quarrel with Earth. We have no interest in your species. Our target is the Queen. Move and you can return to your small world and your small life." Thought about Earth. He thought about his home city, about the streets where he had grown up, about the people he had left behind. He thought about his mother who had cried when he left for the stars. He thought about his sister who had made him promise to come home safe. He thought about all the things he would never do, all the places he would never see, all the years he would never live. And then he thought about Queen, sitting alone on her throne, surrounded by enemies, abandoned by everyone who should have protected her. "No," said, "I will not move." The assassin was silent for a moment. Then it made a gesture to the others, a small movement of its hand. They began to spread out, circling around, preparing to attack from all sides. Their movements were precise and coordinated. They had done this many times before. They knew exactly how to kill. Adjusted his stance. He had trained for combat, but not for this. He had practiced with his weapon, but never against enemies like these. He had no plan, no strategy, no hope of victory. He had only himself, his weapon, and his refusal to run. The fear was still there, pressing against him, telling him he was going to die. And for the first time he accepted it. Yes, he thought, I am going to die, but not yet, not without trying. Something strange happened inside his mind. The fear did not disappear, but it changed. It became smaller, quieter, less important. He was still afraid, but the fear no longer controlled him. It was just another feeling, like hunger or tiredness, something to be acknowledged and then set aside. This was the human gift, not the ability to ignore fear, but the ability to function through it. Millions of years of evolution had built this capacity. His ancestors had faced predators while terrified. They had kept moving through pain and exhaustion and despair. They had survived not by being fearless, but by being stubborn. Was stubborn, it was perhaps his only real talent. The assassins moved. They came at him from all directions, fast and silent. Fired his weapon, not aiming at any particular target, just filling the space with energy. The shots did not hurt the assassins, but they made them dodge, made them slow down, bought him one more second. 1 second, then another, then another. He did not know how long he could last. He did not know if anyone was coming to help. He did not know anything except that he would not stop fighting until his body stopped working. On her throne, Queen watched this human fight. She watched him take a hit that should have killed him and keep standing. She watched him fire again and again, never stopping, never surrendering. She watched him bleed and stagger and refuse to fall. And for the first time in 400 years, She felt something she had forgotten she could feel. Hope. What followed was not a battle. A battle implies two sides with some chance of victory. This was something else. This was a man trying to hold back the ocean with his hands. This was a single candle fighting against the dark. But even candles can burn for a while before they go out. Moved. He did not think about where he was going or what he was doing. His body simply reacted, drawing on training he barely remembered and instincts he did not know he had. He fired at the assassin on his left and rolled away from the one on his right. He ducked under a blade that would have taken his head and threw himself behind a fallen pillar. The assassins were fast, faster than anything had ever seen. Their blades cut through the air like light, leaving trails of silver in the darkness. They moved without sound, without wasted motion, without mercy. They were perfect killing machines. But they were also curious. In all their centuries of murder, the silver knives had never encountered a being that could resist the void chorus. They had faced warriors who could crush stone, who could outrun light, who could stop hearts with their minds. All of them had fled. All of them had broken. But this human, this small and fragile creature, kept fighting. They could have killed him in an instant. They could have overwhelmed him with their numbers and their speed and their skill. But they wanted to understand. They wanted to know how this was possible, so they played with him, testing him, seeing how long he could last. It was a mistake, not because was a threat to them. He was not, but because every second they spent playing was a second that the universe could change. Did not know this. He did not know that help was coming. He only knew that he was still alive, still fighting, still standing between the queen and the knives. He fought with everything he had, which was not much. He was not a great warrior. He was not a hero from stories. He was just a man who refused to give up. The assassins cut him. Their blades found his arms, his legs, his back. Each wound burned like fire but kept moving. Blood ran down his body and dripped onto the floor, but he kept fighting. His vision blurred, but he kept firing his weapon. Interesting, the lead assassin said. It had stopped attacking to watch struggle. Your body is failing, your blood is leaving you. You must know that you cannot win, yet you continue. Why? Did not answer. He did not have breath for words. He used all his energy to stay on his feet, to keep his weapon raised, to take one more step toward the assassins. Is it loyalty? The assassin asked. You owe your queen nothing. She does not even know your name. Is it duty? Your duty was to stand at your post and look pretty, not to die for a ruler who sees you as furniture. Is it stupidity? Perhaps you simply do not understand that you have lost. Laughed. It hurt to laugh. Everything hurt. But he laughed anyway, a broken sound that echoed through the empty throne room. You do not understand, he said. His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. It is not about winning. It is not about duty or loyalty. It is about being human. The assassin tilted its head. Explain. Took another step forward. His legs shook, his wounds screamed, but he moved. Humans are not strong, he said. We are not fast. We are not smart. We have no special powers. We are soft and weak and we die easily. But we do not stop. We never stop. We climb mountains because they are there. We cross oceans because we want to see what is on the other side. We face impossible odds because sometimes impossible things happen. He raised his weapon one more time. His hand could barely hold it. Blood dripped from his fingers. I am going to die here, said. I know that, but I am going to die standing. I am going to die fighting. And maybe, just maybe, I am going to buy enough time for something to change. The lead assassin was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke, and there was something in its voice that might have been respect. You are correct. You are going to die, but I will remember you, human. You have earned that much. It raised its blade. And then the ceiling exploded. The first drop pod crashed through the crystal roof and slammed into the throne room floor with enough force to shake the entire palace. Then came a second pod. Then a third. Then 10 more, crashing down like metal rain, filling the room with smoke and fire and noise. The pods opened, and human marines poured out. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that glowed with energy. They moved fast and hard, forming a defensive perimeter around the throne. Commander was the first to reach. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes like steel. She commanded the Earth vessel Persistence, which had been running combat drills in a nearby system when she received an emergency signal from the palace. She had not been authorized to intervene. Earth was new to the galactic community. Getting involved in politics could have started a war. The smart thing, the safe thing, would have been to wait for orders. Was not interested in being smart or safe. She had received a signal that said the Queen was in danger, and a human guard was the only thing standing between her and death. That was enough. "Get him to medical," she ordered, catching as he finally collapsed. "And secure the perimeter. Nothing gets near the Queen." The Silver Knives watched the Marines take their positions. They calculated the new variables: 23 armed humans, heavy weapons, defensive formation. The odds had changed. Not impossible, but no longer certain. And certainty was everything to them. The lead assassin made a decision. It made a gesture to the others, and they melted back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as they had come. There would be other opportunities, other nights. The Queen would not live forever. But tonight she would live. His eyes fluttered closed as the medics worked on him. The last thing he saw was Queen's face, pale with shock, her luminescent skin dimmed to almost nothing. She was looking at him with an expression he did not understand. Then darkness took him, and he knew nothing more, woke slowly like rising from deep water. The first thing he noticed was that nothing hurt. This surprised him. The last thing he remembered was pain, endless pain, his body being cut apart piece by piece. Now there was nothing, just warmth and softness and a strange feeling of floating. He opened his eyes. He was in a room he did not recognize. The walls were made of something that looked like pearl, smooth and gleaming. The ceiling was high and curved, painted with images of stars and galaxies. The bed beneath him was softer than anything he had ever felt, and it seemed to adjust itself to his body as he moved. This was not a military hospital. This was not even a normal hospital. This was something else entirely. A face appeared above him. It belonged to a doctor, an old male with skin that glowed soft blue. He smiled when he saw eyes open. "You are awake," the doctor said. "Good. We were not certain you would survive. Your injuries were severe. 4 wounds that should have been fatal. Massive blood loss. Organ damage. By all logic, you should be dead." Tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. The doctor gave him water, and he drank slowly. "How long?" asked when he could talk. 6 days. We kept you unconscious while your body healed. Medicine is advanced, but even we have limits. Your species, however, seems determined to ignore those limits." The doctor shook his head in wonder. "Your cells refused to stop dividing. Your organs refused to shut down. Your heart kept beating even when there was almost no blood left to pump. We have never seen anything like it." Thought about this. He did not feel special, he just felt tired. "The Queen?" he asked. "Safe, thanks to you. The conspirators have been arrested, Lord, Lady, General, and dozens of others. The plot went deeper than anyone realized. They had been planning this for 30 years. The doctor paused. "If you had not held the assassins back, even for those few minutes, the Queen would be dead and the Empire would be in chaos. You saved millions of lives." Did not know what to say to this. He had not been thinking about millions of lives. He had only been thinking about standing up, about not running, about being stubborn enough to buy one more second. "The Queen wishes to see you," the doctor said. "When you are strong enough. She has asked about you every day." This surprised more than anything else. The Queen had asked about him. She had never even known his name. It took 2 more days before was strong enough to leave his bed. The medicine had healed his wounds, but his body was still weak from the trauma. He walked slowly, supported by medical staff, through corridors of pearl and crystal. Servants stopped to bow as he passed. Guards saluted him. He did not understand why. The queen received him in a private chamber, not the throne room. The room was small and simple, with only a few chairs and a window that looked out at the stars. Was standing by the window when entered. She turned to face him, and he was struck again by how beautiful she was. Her skin glowed with soft silver light, and her eyes reflected the stars behind her. "Leave us," she said to the servants. They bowed and left, closing the door behind them. Stood alone with the Queen of 7-star systems. He did not know what to do with his hands. He did not know what to say. He had never been in a situation like this. Studied him for a long moment. Her ancient eyes moved across his face, his body, his hands. She was seeing him, truly seeing him for the first time. "Why?" she asked finally. Her voice was soft and musical, but there was genuine confusion in it. "I do not understand. You owed me nothing. I had not earned your loyalty. I had not even acknowledged your existence. You were furniture to me, a decoration, a political gesture. Why did you stay? Why did you fight? Why did you nearly die for someone who meant nothing to you?" Thought about this question. He had asked himself the same thing many times during the long hours he had spent recovering, and he had found an answer, though he was not sure it would make sense to someone who had lived for 400 years. "You did not have to earn it," he said. "That is not how it works. Not for humans anyway. You were in danger. I was there. That was enough." The queen was silent. Her skin flickered through several colors, too fast for her to read. "Your people," she said slowly, "are very strange." "Yes," agreed, "we are." Another silence. Then did something that had never seen her do. She bowed her head to him. "Thank you," she said. "That is not enough. Those words are not large enough to hold what I owe you, but they are all I have. Thank you of Earth. Thank you for staying." Felt his face grow warm. He did not know what to say. "I was just doing my job," he said. The queen laughed. It was a beautiful sound, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "No," she said. "Your job was to stand in the outer ring and look professional. What you did was something else entirely. What you did was human." 1 year later, the treaty was signed. It marked a formal alliance between the Empire and Earth. Humans were granted access to technologies that would have taken centuries to develop. Trade routes opened that transformed Earth's economy. Humans were recognized as full partners in galactic civilization. The historians would argue about why this happened. They would point to economic factors, political pressures, strategic considerations. They would write long papers about the forces of history that had brought two species together. But those who had been there knew the truth. It began with one human, standing alone in a room of terror, too stubborn to run. And a queen who learned, for the first time in 400 years, what loyalty truly meant. At the signing ceremony, Queen gave a speech. She spoke of friendship between species, of cooperation, of a shared future among the stars. But at the end, she said something that was not in the prepared text. "They have a saying," she said. "Courage is the absence of fear, but humans have taught us a different truth. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being afraid, being terrified, being certain of death, and standing your ground anyway. This is why we allied with them. This is why we will never betray them. Because when the darkness comes, humans do not ask if victory is possible. They simply refuse to yield." In the audience, standing quietly in the back row, listened to these words. He was no longer a borrowed soldier. He was now the commander of the Queen's personal guard, the first human to hold such a position. He wore a uniform that marked him as one of the most important people in the Empire. But when he looked at himself in the mirror, he still saw the same person he had always been. Not a hero, not a legend, just a man who had been in the right place at the right time and had chosen not to run. He thought about that night often. He thought about the fear, the pain, the certainty that he was going to die. He thought about the choice he had made, the choice to stay, the choice to stand. And he knew that if he had to make that choice again, he would make the same one. Because that was what humans did. They stayed, they stood, they refused to yield. And sometimes, against all odds, that was enough.